Story 1. The Party with the Green Marks. The air was thick with the promise of a good time as the four of us, me, Bryson, Ian, and Chris, piled into Chris's beat-up sedan, the engine coughing to life like it resented the cold autumn night. College life at our small Midwestern university wasn't exactly a whirlwind of excitement for guys like us. We weren't frat brothers, didn't have the charm to land girlfriends, and our weekends usually consisted of video games and cheap beer in Bryson's cramped dorm room. So when Ian got a tip about a party just 30 minutes off campus, we jumped at the chance like moths to a flame. Little did we know, we were driving straight into something far stranger than we could have imagined. Ian, always the optimist, had been texting this girl, Callista, who'd mentioned the party. She was one of those enigmatic types, vague about details, always dodging direct questions. Bryson teased him mercilessly, joking that we'd end up at some goth anime rave with black lipstick and bad poetry. I laughed, but there was a part of me that wondered if we were chasing a mirage. Still, the prospect of a night out was too tempting, and Chris, Bryson's older brother who didn't drink, agreed to be our designated driver. With a six-pack stashed in the trunk and a playlist of early 2000s rock blaring through the speakers, we set off, the road stretching into the darkness like a ribbon of uncertainty. The drive wasn't smooth. Halfway there, Ian's mood soured. Callista had gone silent, her texts drying up like a desert stream. By the time we were 20 minutes in, he was obsessively checking his phone, muttering about how she'd probably ghosted him. "Maybe she blocked me," he said, his voice tight with frustration. Bryson, ever the pragmatist, told him to chill. It was just a girl, and we were almost there. But when Ian refreshed Callista's profile and found it gone, his face paled. "She's gone. Like, completely gone." We exchanged glances. Blocked, ghosted, whatever. It didn't matter. We were too far in to turn back now. The house loomed into view as we rounded a quiet suburban street, a sprawling Victorian monstrosity that looked like it belonged in a Gothic novel. Its windows glowed with a harsh, clinical light, and cars lined the block like sentinels. The place was massive, dwarfing the modest bungalows around it, its gabled roof cutting a jagged silhouette against the moonlit sky. "This is it?" Bryson asked, skepticism dripping from his voice. It didn't look like a college party. No red Solo cups littered the lawn, no thumping bass rattled the windows. But people were streaming in, their silhouettes sharp against the bright interior. So we parked a block away to pre-game with our beers. As we sipped, watching groups of well-dressed strangers filter into the house, a strange unease settled over me. The crowd didn't look like our usual college crew. They were older, maybe late 20s or early 30s, their clothes tailored and expensive. Cocktail dresses, pressed shirts, the kind of outfits you'd wear to a gallery opening, not a kegger. Ian, still brooding over Callista, downed his beer and declared he needed a buzz before facing the night. We didn't argue. After a few drinks, we steeled ourselves and approached the house, the gravel crunching under our sneakers like a warning. Stepping inside was like crossing into another world. The air was heavy with an unfamiliar scent, something floral, almost medicinal. The lights were all on, stark and unforgiving, casting every detail of the ornate interior into sharp relief. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their prisms glinting like eyes. The furniture was antique, polished to a mirror sheen, and the walls were lined with oil paintings of stern-faced figures in old-fashioned attire. The music wasn't what we expected either. No top 40 hits or EDM anthems, but a haunting instrumental drone that seemed to vibrate in our bones, like something you'd hear in a dream you couldn't wake from. The people were even stranger. They moved with a deliberate grace, their conversations low and measured, their eyes flicking toward us with a mix of curiosity and disdain. They were dressed like they'd stepped out of a magazine, silk dresses, tailored blazers, not a single graphic tee in sight. We, in our hoodies and jeans, stuck out like weeds in a rose garden. "What the hell is this place?" Bryson whispered, his usual bravado faltering. Ian shrugged, but his eyes were darting around, searching for Callista. Chris, ever the sober one, looked bored and announced he was going to smoke in the car. We didn't stop him. As we wandered deeper into the house, grabbing drinks from a table laden with crystal decanters, I started to notice something odd. People were watching us, not blatantly, but in quick, furtive glances, their eyes lingering just long enough to make my skin crawl. I checked my reflection in a gilded mirror, half expecting to find spinach in my teeth, but there was nothing. "Am I paranoid or are people staring?" I muttered to Bryson. He smirked, clapping me on the shoulder. "Relax, man. You're just not used to being the center of attention." Then everything changed. A trio of women approached us, their smiles sharp and predatory. They were stunning, tall with flawless skin and eyes that seemed to see right through us. "You boys look like you could use some company," one of them said, her voice smooth as velvet. Her name was Tina, and she had a cascade of dark hair and a dress that clung to her like a second skin. The other two introduced themselves as Lila and Mara, their names rolling off their tongues like incantations. They were flirtatious, almost aggressively so, their laughter bright and brittle. They joked about an entrance fee, holding up a bottle of tequila and insisting we take a shot. We didn't hesitate. When three gorgeous women offer you a drink, you don't say no. The night blurred into a haze of alcohol and conversation. Tina stayed close to me, her hand brushing my arm, her eyes locked on mine. I was flattered, but there was something unsettling about her intensity, like she was studying me. As we danced to the strange, wordless music, I noticed a mark on her neck, a thin, vivid green line, like it had been drawn with a marker. It was so precise, so unnatural, that I couldn't stop staring. Was it a tattoo? Makeup? I wanted to ask, but the words caught in my throat. She caught me looking and smiled, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't place. Bryson and Ian were having the time of their lives, each paired off with Lila and Mara. I saw them slip upstairs, their laughter echoing down the grand staircase. Tina leaned in, her breath warm against my ear, and suggested we find somewhere quieter. My heart raced, but anxiety clawed at me. "I need to hit the bathroom," I stammered, excusing myself. I needed a moment to breathe, to make sense of the surreal night. The bathroom was upstairs behind a heavy oak door. I waited outside, my thoughts spiraling, until the door swung open and a man stepped out. He was tall, older, maybe in his 40s, with sharp features and a white button-down that looked freshly pressed. He bumped into me, hard, and I turned expecting an apology. Instead, he just stared, his eyes cold and unblinking, like he was sizing up prey. And then I saw it, the same green line on his neck, identical to Tina's. My stomach lurched. "What's your problem?" I blurted, my voice sharper than I intended. He smirked, a slow, deliberate curl of his lips. "Who invited you?" he asked, his voice low and mocking. I froze, my mind racing. "Callista," I said, the name tumbling out before I could think. His smirk widened, but his eyes darkened. "Callista," he repeated, glancing around the crowded room. "Do you see Callista here?" Before I could respond, I slammed the bathroom door, my heart pounding. Inside, I splashed water on my face, trying to shake the unease. That green mark, it wasn't a coincidence. I left the bathroom, determined to find my friends and get out. As I moved through the party, I started noticing more green lines on people's necks, all identical, like a secret brand. They were everywhere, on a woman sipping wine, a man laughing too loudly, a couple whispering in a corner. The more I saw, the more I felt like an outsider in a game I didn't understand. I found Bryson and Ian coming down the stairs, their faces flushed with excitement. "We need to leave," I said, grabbing their arms. I told them about the marks, the man, the way everyone was watching us. They laughed, brushing it off as drunken paranoia. "You're just mad we're getting lucky," Bryson teased. But then I saw it, a red line on Ian's neck, thin and stark against his skin. I checked Bryson, same thing. "What the hell is that?" I demanded, my voice rising. Ian touched his neck, frowning. "Probably just makeup," he said. But Bryson's eyes widened, doubt creeping in. We argued in a quiet hallway, the music pulsing like a heartbeat. Ian was stubborn, insisting he wanted to stay for Mara. Just then, another guest passed by, his gaze lingering on us. Another green line. That was it. I grabbed Bryson, and we dragged Ian toward the exit, the crowd parting like a sea of silent watchers. No one stopped us, but their eyes followed. cold and knowing. We sprinted to Chris's car, piling in as he gunned the engine. As we sped away, Ian and Bryson's phones lit up with texts from Lila and Mara, asking why we left. "How do they even know?" Ian muttered, his voice shaking. We blocked the numbers, the car silent except for the hum of the road. Back at the dorm, we scrubbed at the red marks, but they didn't fade, not for days. We never found Callista, and we never went back to that house. But sometimes in the dead of night, I swear I hear that droning music. And I wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed. Story 2. The Stalker in the Shadows. The life of a graduate student is supposed to be predictable. Long hours, endless research, when the occasional coffee-fueled breakdown. For me, a civil engineering student at Purdue University, that was mostly true. I'd settled into a routine in my new apartment, a modest one-bedroom in a rough part of West Lafayette. The place wasn't much, peeling paint, creaky floors, but it was cheap, and I liked the solitude. My landlord, a grizzled guy named Carl, was more interested in collecting rent than fixing leaks, but I could handle that. I had my car, my studies, and a small circle of friends. Life was good, or at least good enough. That is, until the day my backpack vanished and my world turned upside down. It was a Tuesday, gray and drizzly, when I left my backpack on a table in a lecture hall to use the restroom. A rookie mistake, I know, but I was exhausted, juggling midterms and a group project. When I returned, the bag was gone. Laptop, wallet, keys, all of it. The lecture hall had no cameras, and campus security was about as helpful as a wet paper towel. I canceled my cards, reported the keys to Carl, and started pricing out replacement laptops. It was a hassle, but I figured it was just bad luck. I didn't realize that theft was only the beginning. 3 days later, I came home to find a note slipped under my door. I assumed it was Carl griping about late rent, but when I unfolded the paper, my blood ran cold. In jagged, handwritten scrawl were 3 words: "I see you." No name, no explanation. My first thought was a prank, but then it hit me. Whoever took my backpack had my address, my keys, everything. They'd been in my apartment, or at least close enough to slide that note under the door. I checked the locks, my heart hammering. The deadlock was secure, but that didn't stop the itch of paranoia crawling up my spine. Over the next week, more notes appeared, each one more unsettling than the last. "I know what you did. Watch yourself. You can't hide." They were always handwritten, the ink smudged like they'd been written in a hurry. I started sleeping with a baseball bat by my bed, jumping at every creak in the old building. I hadn't done anything worth this kind of attention. No enemies, no scandals. But someone had my laptop, and who knew what they'd found? Emails, photos, search history. My entire life was on that machine. I called the police, but without evidence of a break-in or a clear threat, they couldn't do much. Carl was even less helpful, promising to change the locks but dragging his feet. "It's not an emergency," he said, his voice gruff over the phone. I wanted to scream. How was someone sneaking into my life not an emergency? I started noticing small things. My shoes moved from the mat, my coat draped over a chair instead of hung up. At first I chalked it up to stress, but then I came home to find my bedroom ransacked. Drawers yanked open, books scattered, bed sheets stripped. Nothing was stolen, but the violation was palpable. The police came again, but with no forced entry, they were stumped. I begged Carl to expedite the lock change, but he brushed me off. I was trapped, my safe haven now a cage. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I saw a flash outside my window, like a camera. I yanked the blinds shut, my pulse racing, but the street below was empty. The notes kept coming, more cryptic, more personal. "You look tired today." "Nice shirt." They knew my routine, my clothes, my life. Desperate, I started skipping classes, too afraid to leave the apartment. I bought a cheap webcam, setting it up to record the door while I was out. The first day, nothing. The second, I came home to find the camera unplugged, the footage blank. That's when I knew. They'd been inside. I stopped sleeping, surviving on energy drinks and paranoia. I considered moving, but my lease was ironclad, and I couldn't afford to break it. One night, I decided to fight back. If they knew my schedule, I'd use it against them. I left my car on campus, making it look like I was in class, then hid in my closet with a flashlight and my phone. Hours passed, my legs cramping, my breath shallow. Then just after midnight, I heard it, the faint jingle of keys, the click of the lock. My heart stopped. The door creaked open and footsteps padded across the floor, slow and deliberate. I gripped the bat, my palms sweaty, ready to confront whoever it was. But then a voice, low, unfamiliar, male. "He's not here." A second voice, female, responded, "Check the bedroom." They were working together. I froze, torn between leaping out and staying hidden. The footsteps grew closer, and I saw a shadow pass under the closet door. My phone buzzed, the sound deafening in the silence. The footsteps stopped. Before I could react, the closet door flew open, and I swung the bat, hitting nothing but air. The figure, a man in a dark hoodie, dodged and bolted, the woman screaming for him to run. I chased them to the door, but they vanished into the night, their footsteps fading into the rain-soaked street. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, there was nothing. No fingerprints, no trace. Just another note on my counter. Next time. I'm writing this now, barricaded in my apartment. The locks finally changed, but my nerves shot. The police are investigating, but I know the truth. Whoever they are, they're not done. They have my data, my keys, my life. And every night I hear those footsteps, waiting for the next time they come back. Story 3, The Ghost in the Machine. Breaking up with Ben was supposed to be a clean slate. 2 years of arguments, passive-aggressive texts, and unmet expectations had worn me down. And when we finally called it quits, I felt a strange mix of relief and grief. I blocked him on every platform, Snapchat, Instagram, even email, and threw myself into my studies at Temple University. My apartment, a cozy second-floor unit in a creaky old building near campus, became my sanctuary. It wasn't much, but it was mine, with its warped wooden floors and windows that rattled in the Philly wind. I thought I was moving on. I was wrong. It started a few days after the breakup, soft noises outside my window at night. Not the usual city clamor of horns and sirens, but something subtler. Footsteps, a faint shuffle, like someone was pacing just below. At first, I dismissed it as paranoia. Breakups mess with your head, right? But the noises persisted, always between midnight and 2 a.m., too regular to be random. I started to suspect Ben. He was sweet, almost too sweet, the kind of guy who'd pine silently rather than confront you. I figured he was lurking, maybe hoping for a glimpse of me, and I let it slide. He'd get bored eventually. Then came the group project. I was in charge of editing a video for my communications class, a big chunk of our grade. I poured hours into it, tweaking transitions and syncing audio until it was perfect. I emailed it to our professor just before midnight, collapsing into bed with a rare sense of accomplishment. The next day, I sat in the lecture hall, nervous but proud, as the professor plugged in his laptop and opened my file. The screen flickered, and the video began. It wasn't our project. Instead, a grainy image filled the screen, a figure in a scream mask, the kind that haunted my childhood nightmares. The voice was distorted, guttural, spewing vile things about me, the professor, the government, even my classmates. It wasn't just insults. It was personal, referencing details from my life I'd never shared. The room went silent, every eye on me. I felt my face burn, my chest tighten. The professor fumbled to stop the video, his face ashen. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor. Instead, I burst into tears and ran, the hallway blurring as panic clawed at me. I waited outside until class ended, then begged the professor to believe me. He was skeptical but checked the email. There were 2 files, the correct project and the one that played. Someone had hacked my account, sent the second video minutes after mine. It took days of meetings with the university to clear my name, but the humiliation lingered, a stain I couldn't wash out. My classmates whispered, their glances heavy with judgment. I changed my email password, assuming it was a one-off prank. Then a week later, I woke to find myself logged out of Snapchat. My stomach dropped. Someone had access. I logged back in, checking my saved stories, my private chats. There were things there, photos, messages, I'd never want anyone to see. I called the police, desperate for answers. To my shock, they questioned Ben, and he confessed to something I never expected. After our breakup, he'd posted my personal info, address, phone number, email, on a shady online forum. He swore he hadn't shared passwords, but I'd been lazy, using the same weak password for everything. Someone had taken his bait and run with it. The realization hit like a freight train. A stranger had my life in their hands. I changed every password, enabled two-factor authentication, but the damage was done. For a few weeks, things were quiet, and I dared to hope it was over. Then a random Snapchat account added me. Against my better judgment, I accepted, and the messages started. Photos of me, intimate ones I thought were private. I blocked them instantly, my hands shaking, but new accounts kept appearing, each one bolder, their messages laced with veiled threats. I stopped sleeping, jumping at every noise outside my window. The footsteps were back, louder now, sometimes accompanied by a faint tap on the glass. I bought a security camera, but the feed glitched at night, showing nothing but static. One morning I found a note taped to my door. "You can't block me forever." My heart stopped. They knew where I lived, what I looked like, everything. The police were sympathetic but useless. Snapchat accounts were anonymous, and there was no hard evidence. I started carrying pepper spray, checking my locks obsessively. My grades slipped, my friends drifted away, unable to handle my paranoia. I considered moving, but my lease was locked for another 6 months, and I was drowning in student loans. The Snapchat ads kept coming, relentless, each one a reminder that I was being watched. I stopped accepting them, but I knew they were out there, waiting. Last night, I heard the footsteps again, closer than ever. I peered through the blinds, my breath catching as I saw a figure in the alley below, their face obscured by a hood. They looked up, and for a split second, I swore I saw a flash, like a phone camera. I slammed the blinds shut, my heart pounding. I don't know who they are or what they want, but I know they're not done. I'm trapped in my own life, a prisoner to a ghost in the machine, and I'm terrified of what they'll do next.